it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
All right, welcome to the Sunday night edition of Out of Bounds. Josh Durso and Nate Sharman here, breaking it all down, reacting to this huge week in professional golf. We start with the madman, Keegan Bradley, getting a win. Nate, what a weekend here at the Travelers.
Keegan Bradley, the winner of the Travelers Championship, his second win of the season. He won back at the Zozo towards the beginning of the season. Won by 3 shots, set the scoring record at the Travelers at TPC River Highlands at 23 under par. Looking at the rest of the leaderboard here in the top 5, Zach Blair, Brian Harmon tie for second. Scottie Scheffler, Patrick Harrington, and Ches Reavie tie for 4th. We'll talk a little bit more about Scottie as we get along here. But Keegan Bradley back in the winner's circle. An interesting day from Keegan, right? Had that hot start, raced out. He had I think it was a 6-shot lead at one point, beginning that back nine at some point. Had some bogeys coming in. Still ended up winning by 3, but it looked like he could possibly limp in, but he righted the ship towards the end and got the pars in and got for the victory. But a couple late bogeys from Keegan was a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah, it definitely was. To me, I watched, I think he went bogey, par, bogey, par, and it was looking a little rough. He pulled that tee shot on 18, a mile left, got really lucky, I think, with where the gallery had basically walked and, kind of mushed down a little bit of that rough that probably could have been worse. He had like 130 in, little gap wedge, kept it on the left side, held it together. But one of those situations where if there were a few more holes, I wonder if he would have held on, but there wasn't. 72 is enough.
Yeah, you see a guy like Keegan Bradley is one of the good guys on tour, right? Fan favorite for sure. People love the guy, a Northeast guy as well, especially too. There. So yeah, he's very well loved. Yeah, in Connecticut, right? And not that far away from home. I think he's from the New England area. So just a good win for Keegan. Definitely a little bit unorthodox, right? With the way he approaches the golfing game. A little bit different than he was, say, 5 years ago, but still a little bit methodical at times. And the way he approaches golf and his pre-shot routine as well. But still good to see him get the victory. But Josh, this begs the question, right? We were talking about how this was a pretty easy golf course this week. 23 under par, won it. The scoring record was made by Keegan Bradley. Yep. Do you think the golf course played too easy this week?
No, we needed it. We needed this for sure.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know what? Like I get it. When we're coming out of majors and we're coming out of these high profile events, people, like to see these guys suffer. They like to see bogeys. But at the same time, people love to see birdies. People like to see scoring coming down the stretch. What were we just talking about? We were just talking about Keegan limping in, with a few crucial bogeys coming down the stretch. Bogeys aren't as exciting as birdies, period. I think it makes sense, even if it is an elevated event. I still think it's okay to have some of these sprinkled in. I don't want to see it every week, and I don't know how you feel about that. Like once in a while, or do you want to see none of these at all?
No, definitely. I'm definitely fine with it. Like you said, Josh, I have the same argument. They have struggled the last, month and a half. It feels like PGA Championship at Oak Hill. Then you had the U.S. Open, and in between there, you had the Memorial at Jack's Place, which all 3 of those courses played hard. U.S. Open broke scoring records the first day, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday was very challenging at the U.S. Open. It kind of felt more like a U.S. Open, right? And how much fun is it to watch these guys with a wedge in their hands in the middle of the fairway? It's incredible because they hit it to within 15 feet every time. And I just think that's cool because as watching pro golf as an amateur, right? You think about when you have your wedge in your hand, right? You may be a little closer than these guys are, but when you're in that 100 yards and you hit a good shot at 15 feet. And speaking for myself, I'm very happy by that. And just being able to watch these guys routinely do that is something that's really cool. And it really goes to show how good these guys are, because if you get a wedge in your hand with a good angle from maybe the middle of the fairway, I would be a betting man if not be a betting man if we're going to hit it outside 15 feet. Right. So just a really good change up to have that. Some people are upset about it. I don't really see why. They just want to see him struggle week in and week out. But going back to your point, and Rory said it as well too in an interview, birdies are more fun than bogeys. That's really the end of the day to it. So good to see these guys struggle a little bit. And but good to see these guys play well a little bit. I'm sure they'll go back to some more median scoring, maybe not easy or hard, but kind of in the middle when they go overseas here in the next few weeks.
Yeah. And, let's not forget too, we're finally going to get a break here with a non-elevated event next week. But this has really been a gauntlet for these guys for like the last, I'll say, really, you go back like a month and a half. If anything, if there's any discussion to be had long-term, and we're going to talk about here in a minute, having an elevated event right after a major. But I think there are some scheduling issues that need to be resolved overall, because the last month and a half for these guys has been an absolute gauntlet. And in a lot of ways, it feels like the meat of the schedule is already behind us.
Right.
In the PGA Tour season. And it's not at all. Like, we've still got the playoffs in front of us. We've still got another major. There's just, so easy golf, like an easy week like this, if you want to call it an easy week, because they threw up a lot of birdies. Fine. Like that, to me, that's okay, because it shakes things up a little bit. It gives people watching something a little different. I just think it's good overall. But to that end, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on having an elevated event right after a major championship? This is the second time this season we've seen it.
Yeah, exactly. Second time we saw it. We saw it after the Masters, right, where they played RBC Heritage at Harbour Town. And that tournament was amazing. They had a playoff between Matt Fitzpatrick and Jordan Spieth, where Fitzpatrick came out on top. I want to go back to Rahm's comments a little bit about how he wouldn't have played this week if he didn't have to, right? He's already missed an elevated event this season. But they have to play in every one of them except for one during the course of the season. And I just goes back to me. This is the podcast where we agree on a lot of stuff, Josh. So I think scheduling errors are a little bit weird in that one. They played the U.S. Open over in L.A. and now they're playing in Connecticut, a cross-country flight for these guys after they played the U.S. Open, which is by far, in my opinion, the most straining mental game of the four majors, right? These guys are suffering to make pars, right? And try to mentally outlast their opponents as well as playing the game. So I think having to fly 5-6 hours to go play in a golf tournament after playing that U.S. Open, these guys are getting on a plane on Monday, they're playing a practice round by Tuesday and trying to get involved. So I think that scheduling errors were a little bit on this one. I don't really know how you'd fix it, because these are every single year, these tournaments are kind of set in stone of when they're going to be and where they're going to be. And the U.S. Open is just going to move everywhere, all across the country, right? In terms of where it is every single year. So one year is worse than others. If they were to play it at Oak Hill, would have been a short plane ride over to Connecticut. So I think it's interesting and something that the PGA Tour should think about next time they have an elevated event after a major championship.
Yeah, I mean, while all these PGA Tour detractors are saying that there's collusion and everything else, this would be an area that we would love to see some collusion between all the bodies that are involved in golf. We know what these we know what the major rotas are for years in advance. You might as well try and create a little bit of a little more ease in the travel if you're going to have elevated events right after. As a rule, I think we're probably going to get to a point where we don't have elevated events immediately after majors. And I don't know if that would put some venues in jeopardy. I don't know if that would mean some sponsors, like major event sponsors, may want different. I'm not sure what that would do to different things, but I think we're going to get there, because I'm not sure you're going to, John Rahm has said what he said. You saw Rory do what he's had to do earlier this year, prioritize his mental health and take some time off and take the financial hit that came with it. I just think, as this thing gets worked out, the PGA Tour schedule, I would assume, especially having to incorporate perhaps some team events once this whole Live PGA merger is done. And of course, trying to incorporate more of the DP World Tour as they also get integrated into this whole new conglomerate. I would assume that these things would be thought out a little better, and perhaps spread out a little better. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world in my mind to have a non-elevated buffer event in between majors and elevated events.
Yeah, it's just also up in the air, right? This is the first year we've done elevated events. Next year, they're even going to change them a little bit more, not necessarily with the schedule, but with kind of no-cut events. And then you have the PIF jumping into the PGA Tour, right? With the Saudis kind of backing a little bit of the PGA Tour. So everything is just so crazy. We don't know what's going to happen next year at all. We barely even know what's going to happen in the end of this calendar year, right? So
Right.
We'll see what happens there. But it will be interesting to see if they find a way to get more of a buffer, like you said, because these live guys like Cameron Smith, Dustin Johnson, they've all said they want to play less golf. So I'm sure that whole play less golf will be a little bit intricated into that PGA Tour kind of thought, especially after major championships.
Yeah, you would assume so. But then at the same time, you almost wonder with all of these different ideas and all of these different series, we'll call them, because we've also got the Tiger Rory series.
Yeah,
like we've got all these different streams of golf getting dumped into the same pot. I don't really know how less golf is going to be plausible with all these different things getting piled into it. I think more money is absolutely going to be a thing, but less golf. I mean, to me, it doesn't even seem possible.
Maybe not less golf, but more strategic on where they play the golf. How about that?
Well, yeah, and I'll just say this. I know we didn't talk about it, but like, I think this is probably the biggest strain schedule-wise that has been created over the last few years is moving the PGA Championship from August to May. Mm-hmm. It creates this absolute rush where from the first week of April, basically, these guys don't have a layoff until late July before the playoffs start. And even then, it's kind of artificial because the guys that are in it are getting ready for the playoffs. The best case scenario in my mind, after all this merger stuff is done and everything like that, would be to get the season spread out again. So it's longer. Stop trying to run away from football. Stop trying to avoid the NFL, because we know that's really what, that's why the playoffs are in August. That's why the PGA Championship was moved to May. Figure out a way to get this thing spread out more so these guys can be prepared and be ready and be on top of their game, because, Jon Rahm has not looked the same the last couple 3 weeks. And I would assume, or his last couple 3 starts, and I would assume, just speculation here, that there's some fatigue combined with everything that's going on with the PGA Tour.
Yeah, definitely.
Fatigue with just having to play this schedule, which is, chaotic at best.
We got to talk about the crowd that was over at TPC River Highlands. It was just, we've talked a lot about the crowd at LACC last week during the US Open and how we thought it lacked and how pretty much everyone thought it lacked as more so of a corporate open without a lot of general admission tickets being sold in that event. Josh, you had a chance to watch a lot of the Travelers as I did. Tell me what your thoughts were on the crowd versus the crowd at LACC.
I mean, to me, this looked like every other normal event as far as the crowd goes. Coming off of last week, it looked like a major crowd because of last week. If we didn't have LACC last week, we wouldn't even be having a conversation about the crowd at the Travelers Championship, because that's pretty much the last thing anyone would be talking about with regard to the Travelers Championship.
Sure, but there is a community aspect that they have there at TPC River Highlands where the fans do show out and they are loud and proud.
There is, but like, to me, it was as good as any of the other elevated events. Like, it was just good. The thing is like, the crowd element to me was great. If you're going to rate it out of 10, what would you rate it? I would give it like an 8.5.
Yeah, that seems fair.
And it would be, to me, exactly the same as the Memorial.
LACC a -1.
Right? Like, it's literally because we're coming off of like what was a -1 or 0 crowd performance at LACC to this. So this just felt like otherworldly. I don't know. Scottie Scheffler just goes and finishes top 5 again. Guys just doing it over and over and over again. It's been 2 months since Scottie Scheffler has finished outside the top 5. It's been 245 days or 18 events since he finished outside the top 12. I mean, we can, I picked him this past week, and a couple clowns on TikTok decided to say, oh, Really going out on a limb picking Scottie Scheffler. Scottie Scheffler is the most consistent freaking golfer the PGA Tour has seen in the last, 8 years. Easy.
Sure.
Not even
Yeah,
close. It's not even close. Like,
just incredible. I mean, you picked him, I bet him, but I felt like it was a good bet. He plays one poor round on Friday, shoots even par round of 70. He's essentially out of the tournament in a wedge contest like that, right? But then follows up with a 63 and then a 65 today. So to get himself inside the top 5, that stat, Josh, is crazy. 18 events inside the top 12. 18.
He's on an incredible run. And the context for us of the Wednesday show is typically betting. And I'm sorry, but if you're gambling real dollars, real money, and is the way I look at it. If I'm going to sit here and tell someone to put actual money on a player, it's going to be Scheffler almost every week before anybody hits a golf shot. Until I see somebody hit a golf shot on Thursday, I'm making sure my money is on Scottie Scheffler because he is the only surefire commodity right now on the PGA Tour who can go out and win. Yes, he hasn't won a lot, but he is there every single week. And unlike a Patrick Cantlay, who's in my mind, the closest comparable player who finishes around the top 5, top 10 week in and week out, he has a winning pedigree. Patrick Cantlay does not have a winning pedigree, in my opinion. There's a hot take for the week.
Well, I wish I would have heard your betting advice before I threw $20 on Ches Reavie this morning. How about that?
Well, I mean, and this morning, I think that was a good bet this morning.
It felt like a good bet. I got 3-1 odds on Ches Reavie down 1 when he's won this event before against Keegan Bradley back in 2019. So, but Ches didn't really have it going today. I think he finished at even par, but he had a couple bogeys in the front 9 and a couple birdie opportunities that went by the wayside. So not a great day for Ches, but Keegan Bradley comes out with a victory.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Over on the ladies side, KPMG Women's PGA Championship. What do you got for us there? Walk us through what happened.
Now that was exciting. Unlike the PGA Tour this week, which was sort of anticlimactic, right? With Keegan Bradley winning by 3, Ruoning Yin wins her first major championship with a birdie on 18. Josh, she's got a wedge in her hand for like 100 yards, and she hits it to I'd say about 12 feet uphill and knocks it in with confidence too to win her first career major championship at the age 20 years old. More about that pack leaderboard, but besides that, I just want to look at some of these young stars in the LPGA because we talked a little bit about it on Sunday, but I want to do a little bit more dive. And I picked four girls on that tour to kind of talk through and how important they are to this tour at in their stages of their career. So starting with Ruoning Yin, the Chinese 20-year-old who won the major today. That's her second LPGA Tour victory. Her first came not too long ago. I believe it was in April when she won. And Josh, she's from China, and she made her debut when she was 19 on the Chinese professional golf tour, won her first 3 events. So this girl is a proven winner, now a major champion, and Yin will be here and on this LPGA tour for times to stay. Another golfer we talk a lot about on this podcast is Rose Zhang, the American 20-year-old who was pretty fresh on tour, right? We saw her go pro not more than a couple months ago, wins her first start on tour, picks up a top 10 in the major today as she played pretty impressive round of 67 today. Had a chance towards the end of the round, but a little bit of faltering towards the end kind of brought her out there. But still a top 10 finish for Rose, and she's going to be definitely around. Talking more about some of these young players, Yuka Saso, the 22-year-old from Japan. She had a second place finish today. Had a chance to kind of maybe possibly get to 8 under, but still had a great up and down from the bunker on 18 to get to that 7 under number, 1 back. She's a major champion. She won the Women's US Open back in 2021. And finally finishing up, Minjee Lee. And let me know if you think that name sounds a little bit familiar, Josh, as she's
where that one's from.
Minwoo Lee, who is a guy we talk a lot about on this podcast. If you know me, I like Minwoo Lee. Got a great social media following too. He did the walk and talk as well during the Travelers and did a great job with that. So Minjee Lee, 27 years old, also from Australia, has won twice on the major championships on the LPGA Tour. So 4 impressive young players on the LPGA Tour. There's more to say, but those are the 4 that I kind of picked out, and 4 names we're going to be continuing to see on the LPGA Tour circuit.
The LPGA Tour is in such good hands with these young players. And, Minjee Lee at 27 years old is hardly the elder out of the bunch, but at 27 years old, still has so much time in front of her. I mean, it's awesome to see. There's obviously been a ton of press and attention on Rosang, but obviously the LPGA Tour, young and deep. And, at this point, with the influx of money that I would assume is going to be coming to golf in general over the next few years, my God, this is just setting things up very nicely for the LPGA to have stars that young people getting into golf can aspire to, and that is going to be a good thing for the game of golf and growing the game. Speaking of growing the game, over on the Champions Tour, can't forget about them. Padraig Harrington won the Dick's Sporting Goods Open here in New York by 1 stroke over Joe Durant. That is his 5th Champions Tour win, first one this year. Old Padraig, he is one of those guys that it seems like, I guess it might be the generational thing, but I was thinking about this afternoon. I guess I didn't really realize that he had been on the Champions Tour as long as he had 5 wins on the Champions Tour. He's just been there for that. That's one of those things where, growing up, seeing him play through the, late 2000s, early teens, getting wins on the PGA Tour, where'd the time go? That's one of those. That's really all I got on that, because
Padraig Harrington is very impressive to me because he's really increased his swing speed over the past year and really caught up to these young guys as well too. Played well at the US Open, had a chance to have 4 rounds under 70. I think he was a couple over on Sunday to finish that round at LACC, but still very impressive for Padraig to notch another win on the Champions Tour.
Absolutely. And over on the Korn Ferry Tour, Jimmy Stanger birdies the 7th hole, win the Compliance Solutions Championship. And then over on the DP World Tour, Thurston Lawrence, watched that one this morning in the dungeon after our Sunday morning round. He won the BMW International Open. He didn't birdie the 72nd hole, but he did birdie the 71st hole. He was also not in the final group, so he had to sit and watch and wait, which might that be the worst feeling in the world? Would you rather, let's throw this out there. Here's the question. Would you rather be in the second to last or third to last group and get in the clubhouse with the lead and have to watch a group or two play in who could potentially get to you or past you? Or would you rather be in that last group with basically having all of the logistics carved out by the time you get to the green on 18 and know what you have to do? Which scenario would you rather have?
That's such a helpless feeling, right? When you get in the number and you get in the clubhouse and you post a number, right? And I think most people are going to say, I want the ball in my hands, right? As we say in basketball a lot, you want to be able to kind of choose your own fate, right? So I would agree. I would say that I want to be on that 18th fairway in the final group. Plus you can see what's going on in front of you too. So you can kind of get where you need to be and kind of figure out where you need to go. So definitely would be the advantage to be in that final group. But there is a little bit of solace when you can just play stress-free golf and just try to post a number and get into that clubhouse. But then what a helpless feeling watching everybody finish.
I think I would prefer to be in that early group, but I don't think I could just sit there and watch a monitor as those last 2 groups come in. I think I would have to go to the range. And
that's why the guys go to the range. They don't normally watch, they'll go to the range and expect to be in a playoff, right? And then just have someone tell them. So there is a way that you can kind of get out of that. These guys are so laser focused that they can just turn it on in an instant and go hit balls at the range and have their caddy just tell them, or whoever it is.
Yeah. Hey, all right. That is going to do it for this edition of Out of Bounds. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for the latest golf news, new episodes, and plenty of other content. We will be back on Wednesday. And remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. See you next time on Out of Bounds.